Welcome to Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
If you don't know when that's playing, we're all dancing. I don't know what it is. It's fantastic. Even the short version, we're dancing. It is Monday morning, so that means it's another Go Astros, the last one of April 2024. I don't know what it is. It's fantastic. Even the short version, we're dancing.
Somebody's got their speakers on.
Wasn't me. Anyway, welcome to our technical difficulties. We throw one of those cards up.
Right.
So I'm totally thrown now. It's the last Monday in April 2024, and I think we're all ready to close the page, close the book, turn the page, whatever the phrase is, on this horrible, horrible month of baseball. With me, as always, James Christopher from Ballpark Nation, Go Astros, and Brian Arbor, also known as Breathing Orange Fire, on your Twitters and the rest of your socials. Gentlemen, we swept a series this weekend.
Yeah, we did.
Like?
Hey, for now 2 centuries, Texans have gone to Mexico in an effort to get people to forget what they most recently did, and then once the late unpleasant has passed, they're able to return to the United States, and it's good to see that 2-century-long tradition has continued with our Houston Astros.
I mean, it's fair that we did beat the Rockies, and if there was a team that was worse than the Astros so far this year, the Rockies were certainly on that list, and it doesn't take long to call that roll. Jim, what did you take away from the weekend?
Well, look, I'm not going to be as is typical with a lot of people. There's a lot of it's just the Rockies, but the Astros have also beaten good teams this year. The Astros have been inconsistent. The Astros have beat themselves a lot, and they didn't this time. They actually threw the ball really well. They kept the ball in the ballpark, and in a stadium, as we learned, it was not everybody can do. And then they hit the ball out of the ballpark. And I think that you cannot take anything but positive. The team looked loose. They looked like they were having a good time. They looked like everything you would hope. And they're going to roll into a series with the Guardians that looks like I would expect them to take 2 of 3. And most importantly, we got Fromber back, and we got good Fromber, which I think we all know is that's really the big test. And the bullpen didn't, give anybody heart attacks.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed, because it was an ESPN game yesterday, and of course ESPN insists on doing in-game interviews because they can't imagine just people watching baseball for the sake of watching baseball. Joe Espada even mentioned when Fromber gave up the 2 runs, he was overthrowing that inning. And it was nice to see that the manager was aware that was happening and didn't need to go look at the film after the game, which is something Dusty, even if he had noticed it during game, wouldn't have commented on it. It certainly wouldn't have brought it up, and maybe wouldn't even talk to the press. So I don't know what my point is. First game was won 12-4. It was 12-2 before Brandon Bielak suffered our desire to just stop playing defense in the 9th. So I don't really put those 2 runs on him. And then yesterday's win was 8-2. 2 solid starts from Blanco and Fromber. Offense showed up between Altuve and Alvarez. We still have some big holes. Brian, what did you see that were positives on the field?
I mean, so I think the first thing is just the winning, because, I put out a short hop after the sweep in Chicago, and I continued it on Substack that they need to win, and they need to win now, because, how we talked about the emotional hole, but they've dug an actual hole, and they need to play at least at the winning percentage pace they had in 2021 when they won 91 games, and frankly better than that to achieve their goals. So mostly I said they need to turn things around and turn things around now. Again, it's nice that it was the Rockies, but we said that about the Nationals the weekend before that, and that didn't help at all. So, hey, it's just good to be winning. I think the biggest takeaway is that Fromber Valdez looked like, as you said, good Fromber. And I was worried about him getting the start at 7,000 feet, and apparently they've turned the infield there in that Mexico City Stadium into a drag race venue. So
yeah.
Even if you got it on the ground, it would get by you faster. So he was able to get lots of swings and misses. He had sort of the rough inning, but it never got out of hand, which is different than what we saw from Fromber sometimes last year. And so I think the most encouraging thing we saw on an individual level was, one, Fromber Valdez off the IL, and two, Fromber Valdez pitching well despite conditions which were not conducive to pitching well.
Yeah, I think to Brian's point about the hole the Astros have dug themselves in, and certainly winning two and continuing to start winning series on a consistent basis is going to be necessary. There's 134 games left in the season for the Astros, so that's a long time. A lot of things can happen, but to get to 90 wins, they basically have to go, 81 and 54?
Yeah.
They've done it in the past. They've done it in the recent past, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So there's certainly a hill to climb there. And I think we all expect there needs to be some changes to the on-field product to make that happen on a consistent basis.
I will say, though, that the thing to point out, and I know Brian's numbers matter and they're important, but it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it does seem like the rest of the West is mid as well. So for all that we've talked about, we're still only 6 games back, and the Astros have actually done really well against playing AL West teams. It's just been teams from the National League for some reason they can't seem to beat.
Well, and we've only played the Rangers so far this year. I think the interesting thing and so we're winning the Silver Boot series so far because people care about that, evidently. It's interesting to me how the division is playing out so far, because it's almost exactly like you would have written it down before the season, except for the Astros. The Mariners are a little bit above 500. The Rangers are kind of at 500. The A's and the Angels are not good. They don't appear that they're going to be good. And then the Astros, if you had said that they'd be 19-9, nobody would blink at it. But instead, they're 9-19 and at the bottom of that division, looking up at the Angels by 1 game and 6 games out of the division lead. Not insurmountable things, but still, to our point, they've dug a hole that they've got to work to get out of.
And it'll take a long time to get out of, even in the best case scenarios. I mean, I guess they could go, they could win the next 12 straight, but if they just win 2 of 3, that'd be really good.
Just win series. Yeah, particularly the second series of this homestand.
Yeah, baseball's played in the long run, so you got to think about them getting back in the long run.
Yeah, I guess what I'm going to say is talk of what we might get for Bregman and Tucker and a trade deadline deal. We'll talk about that on this show in July.
Well, and I think that's the other interesting thing about our fan base, because we've all hinted at it and joked about it when the Astros have faced a little bit of adversity over the last several years, where they lose 3 in a row or 4 in a row, or drop a random series to the A's in September that they shouldn't. The relative immaturity is probably not a great word, but the relative youth of Astros fans, at least on a lot of the social media pieces, don't seem to understand how baseball works from a long run standpoint. It is a long run game. The Astros should do well against Cleveland. This is not a great Cleveland team that's coming into Houston. The Astros need to play better against the Mariners than they did last year. And are they the 2022 version of the Astros versus the Mariners, or the 2023 version? Mariners are going to come in with great pitching, so it'll be interesting to see. But there's a lot of ground that can be made up just by playing division games, and we have almost all of our division games in front of us.
Yeah, and I think also, too, Brian talks about how many of those losses were 1-run losses, how many of those losses were blown saves. A lot of that stuff you do beating yourself. And so I think if they can just start playing clean baseball, you're going to see a very, very different product.
And we are 3 married men, so we do know about beating ourselves.
Microphone. We're going to go handheld for the rest of the show, everybody.
Okay.
So the big news after yesterday's game, everybody's excited about the win, is that Ari Alexander, who works for KPRC Channel 2 in Houston, broke the news that Joey Loperfido, who is not our top prospect, I guess, but is our top prospect because he's being called up, is being called up. And so a lot of the mystery has been around what the corresponding moves are going to be, because A, he needs a place on the active roster, and B, he's got to be placed on the 40-man roster. That could be approached with one single move. That could be approached with a host of moves. And somewhere in between, that's probably where the truth lies. Brian, you wrote a Substack on that overnight and published it this morning. So you might not have a lot of readers yet, but people should stampede out after they watch this show to go take a look. What are your feelings?
Yeah, so one, subscribe to my Substack at orangefire.substack.com. Two, we don't know. We know that Loperfido is coming up, but we don't know what role he's going to play, and therefore we don't know what's a reasonable set of expectations for him. So there are 4 players who could go down, I think, for him. One would be Jose Abreu, and that would be the biggest move because it would be Jim Crane eating like $37 million. And
Yum.
saying we just need a completely new. We need Loperfido to be the regular first baseman because we don't have a good one, and we have one that's hurting the team. I don't expect they'll do that, but that's a possibility. They could send down John Singleton, and maybe they put Loperfido in a platoon and saying, hey, the best way to get anything out of Abreu at this point in his career is for him to be a platoon bat facing primary against left-handers. 3, they could send down Jake Myers and put who the team has soured on for reasons I find kind of mysterious, but he's only started 4 of the last 10 games, and use Loperfido kind of as a platoon bat in the outfield with Chas McCormick and Mauricio Dubon. Loperfido's a left-handed batter, and the team could use that. The other person I could send down is Greg Kessinger. Greg Kessinger basically isn't playing, and I think Greg Kessinger's value to this team is that we just don't have to play you, and therefore we have a little less we got more playing time to we've got a smaller denominator to divide at the playing time. And so that would presume that Loperfido, I think, would come up as a bench bat. So really, to me, I mean, the big question is not, the big issue is not Loperfido coming up. It's who's going down. And once we know that, we can know more about what Loperfido is going to do, what his role is. Obviously, if he hits like he has in spring training and in the minors, where he's got 13 home runs, he's got over 1,000 OPS, both at AAA and in spring training. Yeah, they'll find a place for him to play. But obviously, I don't expect him to have 1,000 OPS at the major league level. It's kind of a big jump.
Jim, how about you?
Well, there's really not a whole lot to add. I can tell you what I want to have happen. Will that count?
Sure.
And it's not going to be bringing Glenn Davis out of retirement. How about that, huh? Your Glenn Davis reference. People don't want Bagwell anymore. No, I actually hope that Loperfido comes up. I hope that Cabbage stays up, and I would like to see Singleton DFA'd, and if he wants to re-sign as a minor league deal, and then send Kessinger down. I think I'm curious too, Brian, about the Myers thing because of the really vocal commitment by the team in the spring, and I felt like he was having a pretty good year, and we've already seen Dubon have some deficiencies in center field that, again, I don't know. But no, that would be my sort of hope of what happens. I've been high on Cabbage since the Astros signed him, and
spoken like a true half Pollock. High on
that's
Cabbage.
right, man. Give me some of that. Give me some of that cabbage.
I don't want to sour on him. We got high on the lettuce instead.
I'm not going to sour on him because I don't want to be a kraut. Yeah. So no, so that's what I would like to have happen. I've been high on him, and it's funny because he's had a really consistent year at AAA. He has major league experience, and all he did was hit a double in his first at bat. So hopefully that's what does happen. I agree though, Brian. I don't think they're going to walk away from Abreu, which makes that less likely.
Yeah. It's the Myers thing's interesting to me. It felt like initially it was we needed to get Dubon's bat going, so we'll get him in the lineup, maybe get a little bit more, a few more base runners, and Dubon's responded to that. I think he was leading the majors going into yesterday in batting average with runners in scoring position. Great. We certainly needed that because that is a deficiency this team has. But we also saw 2 games in a row where Dubon takes weird angles to balls hit in center field, and it cost runs because he's not a true center fielder. He's a decent backup. He's a decent utility guy. It'll be interesting when Loperfido comes up, and I think Kessinger probably makes the most sense just based on how the roster is currently constructed because Loperfido could play third. And that's why Kessinger's there, right? He can play third and he can play second, and he could back up Bregman if Bregman ever took a day off. Bregman never takes a day off, so Kessinger doesn't really have a role. But if you're bringing Loperfido up, there's no point in bringing him up to just bury him on the bench like you've done with Greg Kessinger.
Yeah.
He's got to play, or it's just a wasted – you're starting a clock for no reason.
Yeah. We did get a question about if they kept Cabbage and bring Loperfido up, would they have to send down 3 or DFA? But I think actually moving Whitley to the 60-day DL, IL, or whatever it's called, helps that. I don't know.
Well, on the active roster, they have to send down 2 because they got Cabbage was an extra. They got an extra player.
Yeah,
a position player from Mexico City. Why a position player makes no sense in the rules, but that's what they are. So they have to send somebody down today, no matter what, and then bringing up Loperfido means they have to send somebody else down. They could put Whitley on the 60-day IL. I don't know if his injury is that serious, but I don't know much about his injury so far. But he did pitch in the majors, so I can no longer make the comparison, the comp of Forrest Whitley to Sasquatch.
Yeah, I think Whitley was. I've seen both forearm strain and elbow pain, so who knows? I feel horrible for the kid.
I feel horrible for him. I don't think it's funny, and I don't like.
Yeah,
I know you'll see people on social media joke about it, but Andy, you and I have been following this kid for a long time, and we've seen him overcome the head case stuff. We've seen him do all kinds of things, and to see him just get another road bump is pretty awful.
Yeah, so and everybody on the show I know is, and I'm sure in Astros Nation, is hoping that it is something minor and he'll be back pitching soon. But I think what you do from a roster standpoint is really interesting because the Astros have 2 big holes, 3 if you want to count Chas McCormick, of guys who just aren't performing. Of those 3, Bregman's probably the safest bet to start hitting. You saw a little bit of that yesterday.
It's in April.
Yeah.
We have this conversation every April.
Tomorrow or the next time they play, it's going to be May.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's Justin Timberlake's favorite month, and Bregman seems to like it too. So
Alex Bregman doesn't start until International Workers' Day.
I worry less about Alex Bregman. Jose Abreu is a different story. Chas McCormick's been a little bit of a mystery because a lot of us were planning for him to get a regular gig in Major League Baseball, and that for the most part has happened, and he hasn't responded yet. Could he come out of that? Yeah. Does he have a track record that says he probably will? Yeah. But those 3 have been probably the biggest thing holding our lineup back, other than not hitting with runners in scoring position. And I don't know what the moves are. I don't know what the move is for first base because that's the biggest hole, and I don't know that Loperfido is going to solve that at least initially.
I think people need to really temper expectations with Loperfido, and I know that they won't, but the Astros have had 2 really high prospects come up during this run, Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker, both of which struggled mightily before they got going. And so I don't know if people are expecting him to come up and continue to hit bombs the way he is. Maybe he will, but I think the difference between Loperfido and the other 2 Yahoos is he's got a greater chance of running into one than the other 2, but I think that's the best you can really hope for. And he will probably at least be a more athletic player playing first base.
Yeah. Note that, Alex Bregman was the 2nd pick in the draft and Kyle Tucker was the 5th pick, and they struggled when they first got up here. Joey Loperfido, I think, was the 202nd pick or something close to that. He's a 7th round pick. So he no longer, he doesn't have the innate level of baseball talent. He's certainly improved since his 7th round pick. There's no reason to expect him to hit 13 home runs this month the way he did in AAA. One, he's pitching harder baseball. So the first pick in the draft, Jackson Holliday for the Orioles, called up with big fanfare, got a profile in the New Yorker, which came out the day after he got sent back down. So,
yeah. And it's just goes to show you this game is hard, and it's not, I still think we have a fan base that looks at things through football. Oh, you're a 1st round pick. You better start next year. And it's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Well, if you really look at it in this run, the one guy who came up and immediately started hitting was Yordan Alvarez. And I think most of us can look at Yordan Alvarez and see that he's probably a cut above at this point in his career than most of the rest of the Astros on the roster. We have great players, but Alvarez can take it to a different level than I think most of our players can. And other than that, it's been a lot of fits and starts, and that's what's normal in baseball. It is not normal for a guy to come up, tear the cover off the ball, and then continue to hit after that. They might have a hot start. They might have a cold start. Eventually, water finds its balance, right?
It's a sport that works in the long run. And, of course, 25-year-olds who come up in the first at-bat have to learn stuff. 20-year-olds do. We saw, again, with Jackson Holliday. players like Alex Bregman.
Unless you're getting your first at bat and you're for the Cubs and you decide to hit a massive bomb off of Jose Abreu because he throws you a cookie down the middle of it.
I mean, that wasn't
wind.
That wasn't his first at bat. That was his first home run in his career. Yeah, but he's been playing for a few days before that. But again, to that point, then the last person that everybody was excited to bring up from AAA because he was tearing the cover off the ball was John Singleton. And I'm sorry, Lindsay, it hasn't worked out.
If only Lindsay could read your tweets, but she blocked you.
Yeah, I found that out yesterday. I was very disappointed.
I just think that sorry, Craig, Brian Abreu. All right, cool.
Look, we have one too many Abreus on the
let's
team.
Let's stay in the weeds instead of. In fact, let's get out of the weeds. Let's continue with the show. I think now my brain is. That's part of like why I'm pretty big on Cabbage, because I do think he at least has some previous major league experience and has been really consistent across. He's not striking out a whole bunch. He's hitting for average. He's stealing bases. He's doing things that translate more to being successful at the major league level than just hitting home runs.
Yeah, I don't know what none of us know what the team's plans are. I know there are some people who are online right now pretending they know what the team's plans are, but that's not what this show is.
Confirmed.
But I think Trey Cabbage is probably, to Brian's point, he was the 27th man. He probably isn't a part of this equation right now. It literally is just, okay, Mexico series over, you go back to Sugarland. That part's done, if I had to guess. Loperfido is a more interesting piece because of the corresponding moves, and then also just because what are they going to do with him to ensure that he gets bats on a consistent basis? Because so far, if he's replacing Greg Kessinger, like we mentioned, Craig Kessinger doesn't play.
I do wonder if Brian's right then. I wonder if he's replacing really Myers to start out.
But you would think Myers has some trade value. Now, I differ a little bit with maybe the two of you that when Dana Brown made that proclamation in January or February about Jake Myers was going to get the start to prove that, start in center field every day to prove that he's a major league center fielder. That felt to me like GM talk of, I don't like what I'm being offered, so I'm going to tell you that he's valuable to us, and maybe that helps the offer, because there were teams inquiring about Jake Myers in the offseason.
His language on that was less clear than his language about Chas McCormick. And I always sort of interpreted that is that Jake Myers will get chances to play more than he did last year. Chas McCormick will be in the lineup every day unless there's a reason for him not to be. And so for the first, 2 weeks, that seemed to be what was happening, and Myers played well. Myers is not a superstar and all-star, but he's, hits home runs every once in a while and plays exceptional defense in center field. And it's always been curious for the last 2 years why the Astros either expect more for him or do they just evaluate. Some of that is they evaluate they need to get at-bats for Dubon. Dubon's not played an inning at shortstop this season.
Right.
He's played sort of second base, only when Altuve, I think he's had one off day, and DH. So, some of that is they're looking to get at-bats for Dubon.
Which I don't understand why Dubon's playing almost every day, but just moving around the infield. Like that seems to be the best bet for him because he stays fresh at all those positions.
Yeah, they haven't played it in first base, which I know is a challenge for him, but the alternatives have been
a challenge for me.
Well, the plan, I think, was the plan as was stated was we're going to use the DH spot to give guys regular rest, even guys that don't normally want rest, and that would give Dubon the opportunity to play different positions because that's his real value to the team. The problem is we haven't been winning games, and when you're not winning games, giving guys days off doesn't feel great. It doesn't look great because it's not, and we have very proud players, so I assume most teams do. Alex Bregman doesn't want a day off because he's gone 0 for 4 and popped out 3 times. That's not what he wants. Jose Altuve doesn't want a day off, period. I don't know if Joe Espada has the juice in the clubhouse yet to tell Jose Altuve or Alex Bregman that they're taking a day off. He can do that to Jose Abreu.
Well, he did it. I think he did a pretty good job standing up and when he pulled JV out of the game, because clearly JV had some words.
JV wanted the win. JV's only playing to get 300 wins at this point.
Well, whatever drives you. I used to make films, so I wanted to meet chicks. Never mind, I was already married. But
you can still test drive the car, Jim.
Just because you've already
it has not stopped many filmmakers throughout history.
Well, yeah, but I'm a different breed. But just because you've already eaten doesn't mean you can't look at the menu as long as you don't order dessert.
And this took a very creepy turn. So
it really did. Yes. I'm completely thrown. I love that we have comments, but I'd like comments to be like helping drive the show, not a gotcha moment in the middle. I'm just too ADD for that, so I'm really thrown off now.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be worse about this this move with Loperfido is we probably won't learn anything until Tuesday, about an hour before game time, because that's how this stuff usually works.
I will say this: if they're DFAing Abreu, which I think is the least likely move, that'll get leaked to a national reporter, probably from Abreu's representation. So we may learn that today if that's going to happen. I don't think it'll happen again if it's no national reporter cares about Greg Kessinger or Jake Myers and reporting that. So that won't happen until the Astros release it, or some local reporter gets it. Yeah, some Chandler gets it a half an hour before the team announces it.
Yeah. But barring that, it's very likely that we're going to sit and speculate for 24 to 36 hours before we actually know what the facts are. And the socials will run wild with whatever speculation gets hot.
Why change now?
It wouldn't be, we all strive for consistency in life. And I think if nothing else, Astros Twitter is very consistent.
It was good enough for our fathers at a water cooler in 1985.
It's good.
All right. So turning the page a little bit, we've got three against the Guardians and then 3 against the Mariners at home. Then we get to go to New York, but let's focus on this next week. And I'll start with Brian on this. What do you want to see besides the obvious of wins in this Cleveland series coming up?
Good starting pitching. The single sort of biggest issue with the team and the most worrisome long-term issue with the team so far has been starting pitching. We may get our first turn through the rotation with both our top 2 pitchers in it, with both Fromber and Verlander. So I have my fingers crossed for those listening here as I say this here. And so that would be good. It'd be nice to get Spencer Arrighetti in particular. They chose him over JP France, and he struck out a lot of guys and would like to see a little bit more control so the strikeouts are not all in service of trying to stave off a 4-run inning.
I did say something interesting in regards to starting pitching. The games, and the record hasn't reflected it, but the games where Fromber, Javier, Verlander, and one more. Blanco have started. Thank you. They've got like a 1.83 ERA and a really low whip and looked like the team we would have expected to see. The rest of the starts have been bad to the point of like a 6+ ERA. And the bullpen has been consistently bad.
Exacerbating that is the rest of the starts have been a larger share than.
Yeah, and it's been a much smaller number because Fromber's been injured. Javier's been injured. JV got a late start. So Blanco's been your consistent guy. I mean, if you have a Cy Young on your team right now, it's Ronel Blanco, and nobody would have predicted that 30 days ago. Not even Ronel Blanco's mom, I don't think, would have predicted that.
I do think, Brian, what could be good fodder for a Substack, though, is why France, Loperfido, and Hunter Brown just can't get out of the first inning. But then they settle in when it gets into the second. And I don't know what's going on there, but it does seem like a pattern at this point.
And heck, Blanco did it on Saturday.
Yeah, at least he was able to limit the damage to his two, which,
I mean, I don't want to be this guy, and I certainly don't want to drive this kind of traffic, but I think there is, even if you can't quantify it, some value of a Martin Maldonado on your staff who is meticulous about preparation. I don't know that Yiner's not meticulous, but it goes to reason that a 2-year vet is probably not as experienced in that role as somebody who's been playing for 37 years and is also batting 37.
And one part of that may be that the pitchers question Yiner
Yeah.
And they never question Maldi because he's a second-year player. And they never question Maldi because they know the one thing Maldi's there for. So again, it's part of why, I try to avoid psychological analysis is I'm not trained at it and I don't understand it. I'm not even sure good psychologists understand, what's going on in this mound meeting and how can I extrapolate this? But again, as with all this other stuff, we sort of try this stuff. Broadly, their starting pitching, particularly guys like Hunter Brown, haven't pitched to their talent, and we need them to do that. We also need people to be healthy, and there's indications Javier's injury is not going to be long. So hopefully, again, that's
there's thought he might make his next start. Actually,
it was more precaution than anything in putting him on the IL, getting him scratching him from that start. Fingers crossed again.
As far as what I'm looking for, first of all, I want them to go 4-2. But most importantly, this weekend is going to be Star Wars weekend at Minute Maid Park. I've got this is the best Star Wars night T-shirt made ever. And I think it's like 7 years old, but it's basically lightsabers making the old rainbow. And I just love theme nights. Get out to some theme nights. Just don't tell Chandler Rome you're enjoying them because he will block you. Or maybe, I won't say that. I think he probably hates all theme nights equally, but I kind of dig the fact that even though I can't go, that their Astros are doing Star Wars weekend. They're doing all 3 Star Wars nights. So get out there, hear some good fireworks or see some good fireworks. And I have ordered the fun bobblehead. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I want people to have fun at Star Wars weekend. And remember, to go to the ballpark should be a good time. Baseball is a game, and games are supposed to be fun.
And with that movie quote, we've hit our time limit for the day. For Go Astros, I wish you a hearty Go Astros. I will turn it over to Jim and Brian to close out the show.
I'm done. The force is with everybody. May the force be with you, and also with you.
May the force be with the starting pitching. I'm in.